Hi, I'm Lars Keil with the Boston Cannons, and this is Gear Guide. Today, we're going to talk about shafts, and we're going to talk about all the little things you need to worry about when you're picking out the right one for you. When you're buying a new shaft, there are a number of things you need to consider. 1, cost. You should have an idea of what your budget is before you go to the store. Very important. Next, what is it made of? Generally, shafts fall into one of 2 categories: alloy or composite. Alloy shafts are generally some measure of aluminum, titanium, scandium. You're going to run into a lot of fun EM words when you're doing your research about a shaft. But generally, a lot of the alloys that you're going to see on the market today are strong and very light. On the other side of the spectrum, you have your composite shafts that are made up of some measure of carbon fiber and some other materials. Generally, these might have a little bit more flex. They might be a little bit lighter depending upon the construction, but they are also very strong. The next thing we need to worry about is weight. I talk to a lot of players, especially younger players, and they're worried about how heavy the shaft is, and they want something that's as light as possible. Light isn't always better. Sometimes you can have a very light shaft that's also very strong and will withstand being able to be played with for a long, long time. Sometimes too light is not necessarily good because it might mean that it might be a little bit weaker than some of the other shafts. It's all dependent upon the player and their preferences. Lastly, and to me this is probably the most important one, is hand feel. One of the things that I think is most important is literally how the shaft feels in your hands. Every shaft has a different kind of grip, and I know what I like, and I know there are other people who don't feel the same way. Everyone likes what they like, and that's great. And thankfully, we have a lot of manufacturers who are making great shafts with different grips that will accommodate just about anybody. Here, we have the Maverick Hypercore. Now, this is a new innovation from Maverick that they came out with a year or so ago. One of the things that makes this shaft unique to the entire market is it has a strut running vertically down the length of the shaft. Now, what this does is it makes this shaft have almost no flex whatsoever, specifically for offensive players when they're shooting. Next, we have 2 Warrior shafts. Both are composite. We have the Warrior Burn Pro and the Evo AX1. Now, both of these are composite shafts, and I'm going to show you them one right next to the other because you're going to see that they both have 2 different shapes. First, I'm going to show you the Warrior Burn Pro. If you notice on the end, it is your a little bit rounded on the edges, but it's your traditional octagonal shape. Next is the AX1. You'll notice that this one has some indents on each side that offer a little bit more grip to the fingers. Some people like it, some people don't. Next is the Warrior Burn Pro Max. Now, this is a D-pole. This is an alloy shaft. Now you notice the grip on this shaft is significantly different than the other. It's more angular, they're more sharp, and it just offers you a different hand feel. Last year, we welcomed True Lacrosse into the MLL as an on-field sponsor, and they had some of the best shafts in the game. This is a True Comp 4.0 D-pole. You'll notice with this shaft, it's much more rounded. There is an octagonal outline, but it's a very rounded, it's not nearly as sharp on the edges. We had a bunch of defensemen on the Cannons last year who loved this shaft, and I can't wait to get it back in their hands. Last, but certainly not least, is a true classic of sorts, the Warrior Titan Classic. Now, this is an oldie but a goodie, a full titanium. This isn't so much of an alloy. You'll see the side-tie alloys all over the place. This is 100% titanium tip to tip. It has a classic octagon shape. There's no indentation anywhere. Honestly, one of my favorite shafts. It's all, when I still play, all I use is titanium because it's strong. It's definitely a little bit heavier, but it lasts. It lasts better than anything. Next, we're going to talk about a couple of things you need to do to properly set up your shaft once you have it to make sure that it performs at the highest level when you get out onto the field. Now, when you bring the shaft home, there's a couple things you need to do before you get out onto the field. One, if you didn't already have a head put on it wherever you bought it, whether it be at a store or someplace else, make sure that the head that you're going to put on that shaft fits correctly. Make sure that the holes line up so that you can put a screw straight into it. Thankfully, even if the holes don't line up, most screws will have a tip. This is a self-tapping screw. Okay, so this screw, you don't need to worry about getting a drill bit because the screw will drill its own hole in the shaft. Make sure that if you are drilling a new hole, that you're doing it on the side of the shaft that has no holes, so you're making a brand new hole that fits perfectly for that head in that shaft. Next, you got to worry about that butt end. Most sticks will come with your classic rubber butt end, like you see on this Hypercore here. Now, most of these aren't too difficult to pull off. Some sticks, like the Maverick shafts, will come with something that a lot of us will call a tape saver. So now with this tape saver, I can move it to where I want on the shaft. Now, if you don't like a tape saver and you want your typical butt end, I can recommend two things. One, tape. For me, I like to use a lot of tape. I want a huge butt end because it saves my hands coming off my shaft when I shoot. But if I can't get my hands on some tape and I need to get outside to warm up the goalies, I'm going to use one of these. These are Rocket Mesh Lacrosse's performance butt ends. They are by far the best butt end on the market that you can buy to just throw right on to your shaft. Not only are they fantastic, but you can get them customized as well. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in to Gear Guidance.
Having the right equipment will help take your game to a whole nother level. Make sure you've got the right gear the next time you take the field.